For 54 years, the moon has been a ghost. Since the last boots of Apollo 17 left the Taurus-Littrow Valley in 1972, our closest celestial neighbor has existed only as a collection of grainy film reels, iconic photographs, and a few hundred kilograms of lunar rock gathering dust in sterile labs. For 2 generations, the footprints of 12 men remained undisturbed, a frozen trophy of a Cold War rivalry that seemed to belong to a different species entirely. But on April 1st, 2026, the silence didn't just break, it shattered. This wasn't just the return of a mission, it was the installation of an entirely new human operating system. When the Space Launch System ignited at Kennedy Space Center's Pad 39B, it produced a staggering 39.1 million newtons of thrust. That's not just a number. It's the physical manifestation of a civilization attempting to claw its way back into the deep frontier. Inside the Integrity capsule, 4 explorers, Commander Reed Weissman, pilot Victor Glover, and mission specialists Christina Koch and Jeremy Hansen, were pressed into their seats by 4 Gs of force, carrying the hopes and the anxieties of a world that has forgotten what it feels like to leave the protective umbrella of Earth's magnetic field. But look past the 8K cinematic beauty of the launch, and you'll find a much darker story than the one told in the official press kits. Most narratives treat Artemis II as a simple repeat of the 1960s, a nostalgic trip to prove we can still do it. They are wrong. This was a mission haunted by a technical thriller that began years before the engines ever lit. Following the uncrewed Artemis I test, engineers made a discovery that nearly ended the program. The Orion heat shield, our only shield against a 40,000 km/h fireball, had suffered abnormal charring. More than 100 erosion points were found where the avcoat material had simply failed. Chunks of it had broken off in ways that defied every computer model. The debate behind closed doors was fierce. Some argued that political deadlines were now dictating engineering reality, that the skill atrophy of a workforce that only launches a rocket once every 3 years was leading to a catastrophic gap in safety. Yet, NASA made a controversial decision. They wouldn't redesign the shield. Instead, they would skip the skip, changing the very way the astronauts returned to Earth to save the hardware from its own flaws. This created the first great mystery of Artemis II. How much risk is a government willing to accept to win a geopolitical race? While the public was mesmerized by the high-definition laser streams, a more subtle experiment was unfolding inside the cabin. We often talk about the astronauts' moon joy, but we ignore the silent passengers riding along with them in the radiation locker. These are the tissue chips, part of the Avatar investigation, or a virtual astronaut tissue analog response. These aren't just scientific samples. They are living human cells, heart, lung, and bone marrow, derived from the astronauts' own stem cells. As Weissman and Koch slept, their biological proxies were huddling in the stowage lockers, absorbing 100 times the radiation found on Earth. This virtual astronaut is the true pioneer. It tells us the terrifying truth about whether the moon is a place where biology can actually survive, or if we are merely sending data sets in human suits. This leads us to the core mystery that most documentaries completely ignore: the psychological operating system. Artemis II wasn't just a flight. It was a stress test for how humans will govern themselves when they are truly cut off. For the first 24 hours, the crew stayed in a high elliptical Earth orbit for a shakedown cruise. They were checking the life support, yes, but they were also testing the psychological OS, the hierarchy of command and operational autonomy required for Mars. In the void of deep space, carbon dioxide doesn't disperse. It pools in front of your face in lethal pockets. If the ventilation fails, you suffocate while wide awake. In that camper van-sized capsule, the crew had to navigate a reality where help was days away, and every drop of water was a syringe-drawn struggle against faulty valves. And then there is the question of truth itself. Artemis II debuted the Haute optical communications system, a near-infrared laser capable of 260 megabits per second. This allowed for the streaming of the cosmos in 4K, an unprecedented level of transparency. Or so it seemed. In an era of AI-generated misinformation and deepfakes, the curation of reality became a new kind of front line. Why does NASA curate the experience so heavily? Why do we see the Hello World photo of Earth as a razor-sharp rim of light, but the sensors scanning for mysterious squiggles and unexplained radar returns on the lunar far side remain a topic of intense, hushed debate? The mission is often framed as a scientific endeavor, but it is actually a demonstration of industrial capability, a message directed at rival nations in a new gold rush for lunar ice. We aren't just going back to plant a flag, we are going back to build a deep space gas station. The astronauts aren't just pilots, they are symbolic representatives in a battle for the resource-rich South Pole. Every decision, from naming craters to managing the 40-minute radio blackout behind the moon, is a piece of a larger geopolitical chessboard. As the Integrity capsule cleared the sound barrier and prepared for its translunar injection, it left behind the world of grainy film and entered the world of the digital frontier. But it also carried a ghost with it. Commander Weissman brought more than just his training. He brought the memory of his late wife, Carol, whose name would soon be etched into the lunar landscape. This intersection of raw human emotion and cold, industrial signaling is where the true story of Artemis II lies. Is this a return to the moon, or is it the first calibration of a system designed to leave Earth behind forever? To understand that, we have to look into the blind spots. We have to look at the anomalies that weren't supposed to be there, and the moon joy that masks a much more dangerous reality. The 54-year echo has ended. The era of exploration is over. The era of the Mars operating system has begun. And as the crew watched the Earth diminish into a silver glint in the corner of a Nikon lens, they realized the gravity of what they were actually doing. They weren't just visiting a ghost. They were becoming the architects of a new human era. But as they approached the lunar sphere of influence, a question hung in the recycled air of the cabin. What happens to the human soul when the only light it sees is reflected off a world of eternal shadow? When the uncrewed Orion capsule from Artemis I bobbed in the Pacific in late 2022, the world saw a triumph of engineering. We saw a scorched but intact vessel that had survived the most brutal re-entry of a human-rated spacecraft in history. But as the recovery teams hauled that 5-meter-wide shield into the labs, the celebratory atmosphere evaporated. What they found wasn't a uniform burn. It was a landscape of atomic-scale sabotage. More than 100 locations on the heat shield, the only barrier between 4 human lives and a 5,000-degree plasma fireball, had experienced what engineers call abnormal charring. Chunks of the avcoat material had simply chipped and eroded away in ways that defied every computer model NASA possessed. This was the birth of the heat shield thriller, a silent technical war that nearly grounded Artemis II before the crew was even assigned. To understand the gravity of this mystery, you have to understand the material. Avcoat isn't just a slab of heat-resistant plastic. It's a sophisticated ablative shield designed to melt, char, and flake away, carrying heat with it. It's the same material that brought the Apollo astronauts home, but something had changed in the 50 years since we last manufactured it. When the data from Artemis I was dissected, a terrifying theory emerged. The material was failing from the inside out. During the intense friction of re-entry at 40,000 kilometers per hour, gases were being generated deep within the chemical structure of the shield. Normally, these gases vent out through the charred outer layer. But on Orion, the material lacked sufficient permeability. The gases were becoming trapped, building up internal pressure until the shield literally exploded in microscopic bursts, throwing chunks of its protective skin into the void. This wasn't just an engineering glitch. It was a crisis of institutional trust. Inside the halls of NASA, a fierce debate broke out that the glossy public supercuts completely ignored. Former engineers and safety panels began to sound the alarm. The risk profile was significantly higher than the agency was publicly admitting. If the erosion had been just a few millimeters deeper, or if the cracks had connected, the Integrity capsule wouldn't have splashed down. It would have vaporized over the Pacific. Critics began to ask the unanswered question that haunts this mission. Why, in the face of a potentially catastrophic material failure, did NASA decide to proceed with humans on board? The answer lies in the intersection of engineering heresy and geopolitical desperation. We are told Artemis is about all humanity, but the timing of the heat shield thriller suggests it is actually about the credible competition from the East. With China methodically checking off lunar milestones and eyeing the resource-rich South Pole, NASA found itself in a vice. Redesigning the heat shield from scratch would have meant a 5 to 7 year delay, effectively surrendering the moon to a rival superpower. This created an environment where political deadlines began to exert a subtle, gravitational pull on engineering decisions. The mission was no longer just a test of a rocket. It was a test of how much human risk a government is willing to swallow to maintain its status as the world's preeminent space power. But NASA didn't just cross their fingers and hope for the best. They came up with a controversial workaround that is the heart of our technical mystery. They decided to skip the skip. In the original mission architecture, Orion was designed to perform a skip re-entry, hitting the atmosphere, bouncing back out like a stone on a lake to shed speed and heat, and then making a final plunge. It was an elegant solution designed to reduce the physical toll on the astronauts. But the Artemis I data revealed a dark irony. The skip phase was actually making the heat shield problem worse. By lingering in the upper atmosphere, they were giving those trapped gases more time to build up pressure and shatter the avcoat. So for Artemis II, the decision was made to perform a steeper, more direct, and significantly more violent re-entry. This is the new information that the successful outlier videos gloss over. To save the hardware from its own internal flaws, NASA chose to subject the human crew to a much more brutal physical experience. By skipping the skip, they are betting that they can outrun the chemical failure of the shield. They are trading crew comfort and safety margins for a direct plunge through the fireball, hoping the material will hold together if the torture is over more quickly. It is a short-term pain, long-term gain strategy where the pain is the intense G-force acting on the bodies of Weissman, Glover, Koch, and Hansen. This maneuver highlights a deeper, more sobering reality: the skill atrophy of a civilization that hasn't done this in half a century. When we went to the moon in the 60s, we were launching Saturn V's every few months. Today, the gaps between launches are 3 to 4 years. The art of making avcoat, the muscle memory of the technicians, and the intuitive grasp of deep space physics have all degraded. This leads to what some call Type A mishaps, failures that are so fundamental they should have been caught in ground testing, but only appeared in the vacuum of space. The helium leaks in the propulsion system and the recurring failures of the wastewater venting system are symptoms of the same disease. We are trying to build a 21st century civilization with a workforce that is still relearning the basics of 20th century survival. As the crew sat in the vehicle assembly building, watching their 98-meter-tall stack being rolled back for repairs again and again, they weren't just looking at a rocket. They were looking at the physical manifestation of a gamble. The heat shield thriller asks us to consider if the moon is a strategic necessity worth a terrifying gamble. Is the search for water ice in the permanently shadowed regions of Shackleton Crater so urgent that we can justify sending 4 people into a fireball behind a shield we know is prone to cracking? The official narrative calls this a visual masterpiece, focusing on the 8K streams and the moon joy. But in the dark lockers of the Integrity capsule, the virtual astronaut tissue chips were the real observers. While the world watched the Hello World photo, Those biological proxies were recording the silent damage of a mission pushed to the edge of its safety envelope. The heat shield isn't just a piece of hardware. It is the ultimate symbol of the Artemis era, a mixture of heritage technology, modern flaws, and the relentless pressure of a new Cold War. As we prepare to follow the crew into the lunar sphere of influence in the next chapter, we have to carry this technical shadow with us. The astronauts are essentially riding a fireball in a vessel that has been modified because its primary defense mechanism failed its first real-world test. They are the pioneers of the Mars operating system, but they are also the test pilots for a workaround. The silence of the 40-minute blackout behind the moon isn't just about losing radio contact. It's about the terrifying realization that if the shield fails on the way back, there is no backup. There is no rescue. There is only the fireball, the trapped gases, and the hope that the skipless plunge is fast enough to outrun the cracks. This is the reality behind the Moonjoy, a mission where the most dangerous part isn't the distance to the moon, but the final 6 minutes of the journey home. As the Integrity capsule pushes deeper into the void, leaving the protective magnetic umbrella of our home world behind, the nature of the mission shifts from a feat of engineering to a biological gamble. On Earth, we are shielded by a massive, invisible bubble that deflects the relentless bombardment of the sun and the stars. But out here, that shield is gone. The crew is now exposed to radiation up to 100 times more powerful than anything felt on the ground, a constant, invisible crossfire of galactic cosmic rays and high-energy solar particles. To monitor this threat, the capsule is bristling with sensors like the hybrid electronic radiation assessors. But the most haunting data isn't coming from a machine. It's coming from the silent passenger. Tucked away in the stowage lockers, riding alongside the food and the oxygen scrubbers, are the tissue chips, part of a project known as Avatar, the virtual astronaut tissue analog response. These devices are roughly the size of a USB drive, but inside them lives something extraordinary. Living human cells, specifically grown to mimic the complex structures of the heart, the lungs, and bone marrow. What makes this investigation so unsettling is the origin of these cells. They aren't generic samples. They are derived from the stem cells of the 4 astronauts sitting just a few feet away. In a very literal sense, the crew has brought biological clones of their own internal organs into the deep lunar frontier. While Commander Weissman and Mission Specialist Koch look out the window, mesmerized by the Moonjoy of a cratered horizon, their biological proxies are huddling in the dark, absorbing the silent damage of the cosmos. These tissue chips are the virtual astronauts. They are the ones truly feeling the burn of the radiation environment in real time. They are designed to show us exactly how human DNA snaps and how the immune system begins to fracture when exposed to the deep space vacuum. It raises a chilling question. Is Artemis II a mission for humans, or is the human crew merely the delivery system for the data being harvested from these chips? The reality of this danger was brought home when the crew practiced their sheltering maneuver. In the event of a severe solar storm, a sudden, violent burst of particles from the sun, the crew wouldn't have time to turn back. Their only defense would be to huddle in the stowage lockers, the very place where their biological proxies were already being tested. They would be forced to move equipment and heavy water bags to create a makeshift barrier, a thick wall of liquid shielding between them, and a slow, agonizing death from acute radiation sickness. Imagine the scene. 4 of the most highly trained explorers in history, billions of dollars of technology at their fingertips, reduced to hiding behind bags of water in a dark locker millions of kilometers from home. This is the safe room of the 21st century, a primitive, desperate bunker inside the most advanced spacecraft ever built. It highlights the skill atrophy of our species. We have built a Mars operating system that can stream 4K video through lasers, yet we are still physically vulnerable to the very environment we are trying to inhabit. In the quiet moments of the flight, the contrast between the human and the proxy becomes surreal. Mission specialist Christina Koch was often found sleeping heads down in the middle of the vehicle, suspended like a bat from the docking tunnel, while pilot Victor Glover wedged himself into a small nook. They were finding ways to exist in a world where up and down have no meaning. But while they slept, their tissue analogs were being bombarded. The avatar chips don't sleep. They don't experience the moon joy or the awe of seeing Earth diminish into a silver glint. They only record the steady, relentless degradation of the human blueprint. This biological tension is the hidden core of the information war surrounding Artemis. We are shown the Hello World foe, a masterpiece of light and shadow to inspire a new generation. But the data from the avatar chips is handled with a different kind of gravity. Every cellular break recorded in those lockers is a data point for a future where humans might not be the primary inhabitants of deep space. If our biology is too fragile for the moon, then Artemis II becomes the first step in a transition toward a different kind of explorer. Under this interpretation, the most valuable mission output is not public science but operational data, the alpha build of a human existence that can survive the stars. The mission is often sold as a stepping stone to Mars, but the tissue chips suggest something more profound. They are the reconnaissance team for a planet that is fundamentally hostile to our current biological form. Every communication delay, every life support adjustment, and every cellular mutation is being mapped to determine if the Mars operating system can actually support a human user, or if we are merely building a system for the data itself. As the Integrity capsule transitions into the lunar sphere of influence, and the moon begins to dominate the vista, the virtual astronaut continues its silent watch. It doesn't see the Grand Canyon of the moon, the Oriental Basin, or the mysterious squiggles on the surface. It only feels the invisible hand of the cosmos tearing at its heart and lungs. As we prepare to swing behind the lunar far side in the coming chapters, we must carry this shadow with us. The astronauts are chasing the light of a new frontier, but their silent passengers are already experiencing the reality of the dark. We have returned to the moon, but we have brought our own vulnerability with us, etched into the very cells of the clones huddling in the locker. Is the moon worth such a terrifying gamble? The answer may lie not in what the astronauts see through the glass, but in what the tissue chips feel in the dark. In the 21st century, the most hostile environment for a lunar mission isn't the vacuum of space or the freezing craters of the South Pole. It is the digital landscape of Earth. We live in an era of deep fakes, AI-generated hallucinations, and a profound, systemic distrust of institutional truth. For 50 years, the Apollo missions were haunted by the faked narrative, a conspiracy born in the grainy shadows of 1960s television. But for Artemis II, the battle for reality has moved from the film reel to the fiber optic. On day 2 of the mission, as the Integrity capsule hurtled toward the lunar sphere of influence at 40,000 kilometers per hour, it unleashed a weapon designed specifically for this new age of skepticism, the Otwo terminal. The Orion Artemis I optical communication system is more than just a radio. It is a near-infrared lighthouse. For decades, the backbone of deep space flight has been the S-band radio of the Deep Space Network. Radio waves are reliable, but they are messy. They spread out across the void, thinning the data until only a trickle remains. Otwo changed the physics of the conversation. By using near-infrared laser light at a wavelength of 1550 nanometers, NASA was able to keep the signal tightly focused, a precision beam of light connecting a capsule in the void to ground stations in New Mexico and California. This resulted in a staggering 30-fold increase in data density. At its peak, the Integrity was downloading data at 260 megabits per second. For the first time in history, we weren't just receiving telemetry, we were streaming the wonders of the cosmos in 4K. But this laser of truth created its own paradox. This is the heart of the information war that the standard documentaries refuse to touch. While NASA celebrated the technical brilliance of the laser, A different narrative was forming in the darker corners of the internet. To a generation raised on the staged simulation theory, high-definition 4K video isn't proof of reality. It's proof of a higher production budget. Critics pointed to video artifacts, compression glitches, and broadcast overlays as evidence of a sophisticated digital reconstruction. They argued that if the footage looks too perfect, it must be artificial. This is the curation of reality theory. The idea that while the mission might be happening, the version the public sees is a highly managed, AI-enhanced media event designed to sustain a multi-billion-dollar industrial ecosystem. To combat this, Commander Reed Weissman attempted something that bridged the gap between raw data and human art. He reached for a Nikon D5 and pointed it through the Integrity's window to capture what would become the Hello World photo. On the surface, it's a beautiful image, Earth as a dark sphere, lit only by a thin, razor-sharp rim of light as it eclipses the sun. But the technical data behind that photo reveals the desperation of the information war. To capture the faint details of the Earth's night side, Weissman had to push the camera to a staggering ISO of 51,200 with a quarter-second shutter speed. The camera saw things the human eye could only dream of. The ethereal green glow of the auroras shimmering at the poles, the air glow from excited sodium atoms at the very edge of our atmosphere, and the zodiacal light, sunlight reflecting off space dust eons old. It was a masterpiece of human hand and machine precision. Yet, this very sensitivity became a liability in the war for truth. The extreme ISO created digital noise that skeptics quickly labeled as CGI artifacts. The very tools used to prove the mission's authenticity were being weaponized as evidence of its fabrication. This is where the mission's psychological operating system meets the information ecosystem. NASA realized that transparency alone wasn't enough. In the 1960s, a grainy image was good enough because the institutional trust was high. In the 2020s, trust is low, so the data must be overwhelming. Over the first 4 days, the Otwo terminal transmitted more than 100 gigabytes of data. This wasn't just for science. It was an attempt to flood the zone, to provide so much raw, unedited data that the staging narrative would be buried under the sheer weight of information. However, the lore vault reveals a more obscure debate: the information gap. Space agencies, by their very nature, must edit and manage their communications. They prioritize certain images, they produce public-facing media, and they time their releases for maximum geopolitical impact. This curation of reality creates a vacuum. When a 4K stream drops for 3 seconds due to a solar flare, the information war fills that silence with speculation. Was it a glitch, or was something being hidden? Was the laser locked onto a ground station, or was it a closed-loop simulation designed to test the public's willingness to believe? The Otwo system is the alpha build for the communications infrastructure we will need for Mars. But its real test isn't technical, it's cultural. It asks whether high-speed data can ever truly bridge the gap between an explorer in the void and a cynical observer on Earth. The astronauts aren't just pilots. They are the primary content creators in a high-stakes battle for relevance. Every 4K frame of the moon's mysterious squiggles, or the annular ring of the Oriental Basin, is a tactical move on a geopolitical chessboard. The laser doesn't just send images. It sends a message of industrial capability, a signal to rival nations that our operating system is more advanced, more transparent, and more resilient. As the crew prepared for the lunar flyby, the tension inside the cabin was palpable. They knew they were being watched in unprecedented detail. They knew that their every word, their moon joy, and even their space plumbing repairs were being transmitted through that infrared beam to a world that was both awestruck and deeply suspicious. The Otwo terminal had turned the Integrity into a glass house. The laser of truth had successfully pierced the 54-year silence of the moon, but it had also revealed a terrifying new reality. In the age of the Mars OS, It is no longer enough to go to the moon. You have to win the war for the data. You have to convince a world, addicted to simulation, that the light they are seeing is real. And as the Earth diminished into a silver glint in the corner of Weissman's lens, the crew realized that the hardest part of the mission wasn't the 400,000-kilometer journey. It was the final, invisible mile of that laser beam, the one that had to cross the threshold of human belief. The 40-minute radio blackout during the Artemis II mission represents far more than a simple technical hurdle. It is an asterisk pivotal moment of absolute isolation that serves as a stress test for both human psychology and the transparency of modern space exploration. The significance of this mystery can be broken down into three primary dimensions. 1. The psychological and operational blind spot. As the asterisk integrity capsule swings behind the lunar far side, the moon's physical mass completely blocks all radio signals from Earth. For these 40 minutes, the 4 astronauts are truly alone, further from home than any human beings in history, reaching a record-shattering distance of 406,771 kilometers. Significance. This is the ultimate test of the psychological operating system. It forces the crew to operate with total autonomy, proving that human command hierarchies can remain stable even when cut off from Earth's legal and social oversight. It is the alpha build for future Mars missions, where such communication delays and blackouts will be a permanent reality. 2. A vacuum for the information war. In an era where the O2O laser system allows for near-constant 4K streaming, the blackout is the only period where the curation of reality is interrupted. Significance. Because the public and mission control are effectively blind during this window. It creates an informational gap that is often filled by speculation and obscure theories. While the official record describes a planned loss of contact, conspiracy communities often suggest this time is used to investigate unexplained radar returns or mysterious squiggles on the far side that the government may not be ready to disclose. 3. The investigation of far-side anomalies. The far side of the moon possesses a natural mystery because it is a place humans cannot easily see from Earth. Significance. Some theories suggest that the Artemis II flight path was specifically designed to use the capsule's advanced sensors during this blackout to verify lunar anomalies detected by previous uncrewed missions. While NASA focuses on geological features like the Oriental Basin the silence of the blackout allows for the narrative that the crew is observing things, such as unexplained structures or impact flashes, that challenge our accepted history of the moon. Ultimately, the 40-minute silence is the moment the mission transitions from a technical demonstration into a profound human experience. It is where the crew is most forged and bonded, emerging from the shadow of the moon to witness an Earthrise that reaffirms their connection to home after surviving the ultimate disconnect. The O2O laser that had been their lifeline to Earth, the 260 megabit per second link that allowed the world to watch their every breath, suddenly flickers and dies. For the next 40 minutes, the integrity capsule is more than just a spacecraft. It is a ghost ship in a radio desert. As they swing around the lunar limb, the massive physical bulk of the moon acts as a shield, severing the umbilical cord to Houston. This is the blind spot, the ultimate test of the psychological operating system, where 4 humans must exist in a vacuum of authority, proving they can govern themselves when the world is no longer looking. In this silence, the crew shattered a 56-year-old record, reaching a distance of 406,771 kilometers from home, the furthest any human has ever traveled from planet Earth. But it wasn't the distance that haunted the cabin, it was the view. On the far side, the moon reveals a face humanity was never meant to see from the ground. Mission specialist Christina Koch described the landscape as a sponge of light, shifting from an electric gray to a deep olive brown as the Earth's glow finally left her field of vision. The crew noted that the darker parts were in the wrong places, a sensory dissonance that told their brains they were truly in a foreign world, staring at a side of our neighbor that has meant so much to human culture, yet remained hidden for eons. From their unique vantage point, they looked down on the Oriental Basin, the Grand Canyon of the Moon, a nearly 1,000-kilometer-wide impact crater that sits like a massive annular ring, or a kiss on the surface, its rugged ridges and deep shadows marking the boundary between the near and far sides. But while the science team in Houston waited for geological data, the astronauts were hunting for something more elusive. They were scanning for the mysterious squiggles, winding surface features that remain a topic of intense scientific debate, features that some suggest are remnants of a lunar past we don't yet understand. In the pitch-black darkness of the moon's shadow, Commander Weissman and mission specialist Hansen witnessed something even more startling: impact flashes. Millisecond-long bursts of bluish-white light where micrometeorites slammed into the lunar crust and vaporized on impact. They logged at least 6 distinct hits, proving that the moon isn't a dead rock, but a world under constant, violent bombardment. This is the new information that the standard documentaries miss. The moon is a firing range, and any future base will be caught in the crossfire of a meteor flux far more dangerous than our models suggested. The 40-minute blackout is the only time the curation of reality is truly broken. It creates a vacuum where the information war is most intense. What were the sensors recording while the radios were silent? Some obscure theories suggest the flight path was designed to investigate anomalous radar returns or hidden features that defy public explanation. Whether it was mapping buried ice in the Shackleton crater or searching for the unexplained squiggles, the crew was operating in a space where the operating system was no longer being monitored by Earth. When the first crackle of static finally broke the silence and the Otwo laser relocked onto Earth, the crew didn't just bring back data, they brought back moon joy. It was a profound sense of human connection, an emotional release after surviving the ultimate disconnect. They emerged from the shadow of the moon not just as pilots, but as the first inhabitants of a new reality. They had seen the far side, felt the impact of the stars, and realized that in the blind spot of the universe, humanity's only true operating system is the person sitting in the seat next to you. As the integrity emerged from the 40-minute silence of the lunar far side, the cold, technical reality of the Mars operating system was suddenly pierced by something the data logs weren't designed to measure: raw human grief. For days, the mission had been a demonstration of industrial power and geopolitical signaling, a calculated move in a new space race. But as the crew crossed back over the boundary between the near and far sides of the moon, they prepared to perform an act of future archaeology that would transform a dead rock into a permanent monument of human memory. Mission specialist Jeremy Hansen broke the professional rhythm of the flight with a request that felt like a quiet rebellion against the mission's sterile objectives. He proposed names for 2 previously unnamed features. The first was integrity, a tribute to the vessel keeping them alive in the void. But the second name, Carol, carried a weight that hushed the comms in Houston. This wasn't just a label for a map. It was a 5.6-kilometer-wide bright spot on the lunar western limb, now forever tied to the memory of Carol Taylor Weissman, the late wife of the mission's commander. The story of Carol Weissman is the ultimate human layer of the Artemis program, a narrative of sacrifice that the 8K supercuts often gloss over. When she was diagnosed with cancer in 2015, Reed Weissman, then a rising star in the astronaut corps, considered walking away from it all. He was ready to trade the stars for a few more years by her side. But she wouldn't let him. She pushed him to stay in the program, to be the one who led the return to the deep frontier. She never lived to see the SLS ignite, but in that moment of lunar transit, her name was spelled out, CARROLL, over a radio link that had just returned from the dead. This was the pinnacle of what the crew calls moon joy, not a shallow happiness, but a profound, overwhelming sense of connection. As the name was confirmed, the 4 astronauts, usually the picture of stoic test pilot professionalism, broke down. Weissman, a single father of 2, blew kisses and threw a hand heart toward the camera, a message for his daughters, Katie and Ellie, who could now look up through a telescope and see their mother's legacy etched into the moon's surface. The crew described this as the moment they were most forged and bonded, moving beyond being co-workers in a system to becoming a family in the void. But here lies the deeper mystery. Is this act of naming a way to humanize a hostile, alien void, or is it a calculated attempt to claim ownership of the unknown? Critics of the Mars OS argue that naming craters is the first step of colonization, a psychological land grab wrapped in sentimental clothes. By attaching human names and stories to the lunar geography, we are terraforming the moon in our minds before we ever build a base on its surface. We are turning a ghost into a neighborhood. Yet for the crew, the Carroll Monument was a necessary anchor. In the Herculean effort of space travel, where the environment is impossibly rugged and the stakes are life or death, the human spirit needs more than just oxygen and propellant. It needs a reason to return. As the Integrity drifted back toward the familiar face of the moon we see from Earth, the Carroll crater served as a reminder that we aren't just going back to stay, we are going back to remember. The Mars operating system may provide the hardware, but Moon Joy provides the soul. But as the emotional high of the naming ceremony faded, the crew was about to be reminded that the moon doesn't care about our monuments. The cold reality of survival was about to reassert itself in the most mundane and messy way possible, with a failure that even a 4K laser couldn't hide. The 6 minutes of plasma reentry blackout refers to a critical period during the Integrity capsule's return to Earth, when all radio communication with the crew is severed. This phenomenon occurs as the spacecraft slams into the Earth's atmosphere at a peak velocity of nearly 40,000 kilometers per hour, which is approximately 32 times the speed of sound. The technical and narrative significance of these 6 minutes includes physical cause, the intense friction generated by the capsule's high-speed entry literally tears air molecules apart, transforming the surrounding air into superheated plasma. Signal barrier, this sheath of ionized plasma acts as a physical barrier that blocks radio waves, preventing any contact between the astronauts and mission control in Houston. Extreme conditions, during this window, the capsule's heat shield must withstand temperatures reaching roughly 760 degrees C**, about half as hot as the surface of the sun. The skipless gamble, as discussed in our earlier deep dive into the mission's lore. These 6 minutes are particularly harrowing for Artemis II because NASA opted for a steeper, more direct skipless reentry to mitigate risks associated with the abnormal charring found on previous heat shields. This trades a more brutal physical toll on the crew for a faster plunge through the fireball. The psychological toll, often described as one of the most dangerous parts of the mission. These 6 minutes represent a final blind spot, where the world can only watch via infrared cameras as a single pinprick of light streaks across the sky, waiting for the crew's voice to finally punch through the static. The mysteries of the moon's far side stem largely from its inherent natural mystery, as a place that remains perpetually hidden from Earth's view. During the Artemis II mission, The crew explored this frontier, uncovering both scientific anomalies and fueling persistent speculative theories. Visual and geological anomalies. A different moon. Astronauts noted that the far side looks inherently different from the familiar near side, observing that the darker parts, lunar maria, are not in the same places. Mysterious squiggles. The crew observed winding surface features described as mysterious squiggles. The origins of these features remain a topic of intense scientific debate. Oriental Basin. This feature, known as the Grand Canyon of the Moon, is a massive impact crater roughly 1,000 kilometers, 600 miles, wide that sits on the boundary between the near and far sides. From the perspective of Artemis II, it appeared as an annular ring resembling a pair of lips or a kiss on the surface. Subtle colors. While the moon often appears gray or light from Earth, the crew reported seeing subtle shades of browns and greens when viewed up close. These colors are significant because they indicate the presence of specific chemicals and can provide clues about how the moon formed. Scientific discoveries and constant bombardment. One of the mission's most startling discoveries occurred while observing the night side and far side. The sighting of impact flashes, These were millisecond-long bursts of bluish-white light caused by micrometeorites slamming into the lunar surface and vaporizing on impact. The crew logged at least 6 distinct impacts, proving that the moon is under a much more constant bombardment than previous models suggested. This discovery is critical for the safety of future permanent lunar bases. Speculative and obscure theories. Because the far side is a blind spot for Earth-based observers, it has become a magnet for speculative narratives. Unexplained structures. Some theories suggest the existence of unexplained lunar structures or hidden features on the far side. Radar returns. There are persistent mentions in conspiracy communities regarding unusual radar returns that have allegedly been detected during previous missions. Geopolitical and tactical signaling. Some obscure theories suggest the Artemis II route was partially designed to investigate these anomalies, though the sources note there is no credible evidence to support such claims. The mystery of the 40-minute blackout. As the Integrity capsule swings behind the lunar far side, it experiences a planned 40-minute loss of radio contact because the moon's physical mass blocks all signals to and from Earth. This period of total isolation is viewed as a blind spot in the mission's curation of reality, where the lack of transparency for those on Earth creates an informational gap that is often filled by public speculation and deep space lore. The skip re-entry maneuver is a controversial modification to the Artemis II mission profile, designed to mitigate a critical flaw in the Orion spacecraft's heat shield. While the original skip-entry maneuver allowed the capsule to dip into the atmosphere and skip back out like a stone on a lake to shed speed and reduce physical stress, data from Artemis I revealed that this process actually exacerbated material failures. The dangers of the new, more direct re-entry approach include increased G-forces on the crew. The primary danger to the astronauts is the intense physical toll. By abandoning the skip, the capsule takes a steeper, more direct path through the atmosphere, which is significantly harder on the astronauts' bodies compared to the original design. Abnormal heat shield erosion. Post-flight inspections of the Artemis I capsule found that the Avcoat ablative material had chipped and eroded in more than 100 locations. Engineers discovered that gases generated during the intense heat of re-entry were becoming trapped inside the material, causing internal pressure to build until the shield literally cracked. A race against failure. The skip maneuver is a tactical gamble. NASA is betting that a faster, more violent re-entry will subject the shield to extreme heat for a shorter duration, hopefully preventing the trapped gases from reaching the pressure levels required to shatter the shield before the capsule reaches the safety of the lower atmosphere. Extreme thermal exposure. Asterisk during this plunge, the capsule travels at nearly *40, 000 km/h, 32 times the speed of sound, creating a sheath of superheated plasma that reaches temperatures of *2, 760 degrees C*. Loss of signal blackout. As the capsule slams into the atmosphere, the friction tears air molecules apart, creating a plasma barrier that blocks all radio communication. For *6 agonizing minutes the crew is completely cut off from mission control, and the world must wait to see if the heat shield and the skip gamble held together. In short, the maneuver is described as **, short-term pain, long-term gain, where the pain is the extreme physical and thermal stress placed on the crew and hardware to avoid a catastrophic material failure of the heat shield.